Um, Welcome everybody. So for those of you who haven't aren't familiar with this layout for the webinar, I have a chat box up there that you guys have already found, obviously, and you're using, and I'm going to expand that a little bit. It just makes it a little easier for you guys to be able to use. I like to keep the participant screen up at least so I can see the numbers and see, if something happens and all of a sudden the numbers go to 0, I know there's a technical issue, so that's mainly why I do that. And then on top of that, you'll see there's a Q&A box on your right-hand side on the top, and that's where if you have a question, then to use the Q&A box, please. If you'd use the chat, I can't guarantee you that I myself or Katja will see it just because there's a lot of chat going on. Okay, so use that, and Emily is also online. She's in chat, and she'll be helping out as well if there's questions, or if she needs to. If for some reason you can't see the Q&A, once in a while there's a technical glitch and you can't do that, so she'll copy and paste it up in the Q&A for us if we need to. Feel free to post anything relevant in the Q&A. Please don't post something that's just way off base. That really would take us down a weird rabbit hole to try to answer. But if there's anything relevant to what we're saying, you post it any time, and then we'll kind of, as there's a lapse or a short break or whatever, as we're moving and there's kind of a natural pause, we'll definitely get to it and answer questions. That's definitely what this is about. And welcome everyone. I suppose we'll probably have some more people jumping in here. There is a link that I posted. It's up at the top for those of you who just came in. Emily can probably repost that. That is the handout for this class tonight. It's a 16-page handout. It's actually 17 pages. The last one's blank by accident. I should probably remake that just because I'm a little bit OCD about odd numbers and even numbers. I always print on the back and try to save the paper, etc. But it's a 16-page handout. You may or may not want to print it, but just at least you got a PDF, an e-copy of it. That's great. And it has a lot of different stuff. It has first aid kit lists. It has herbs. It has the lists to the herbal first aid kits that we sell. So it's kind of my list. It's not Katja's list, but it's my stuff that I use, and Katja's going to talk a lot about her stuff tonight. And it also has a diagram on the very last page. You might check that out. That shows you kind of how you can go about planning a first aid kit. On the first aid side, I meant to have an herbal one ready, but I don't. However, I will. It's still in the making, and when I do, it's going to be a 2-page one. Actually, I'm working on it from 2 different directions, and I will email that out or a link to it out to everybody as well that's involved, that's signed up for this webinar. So you'll get that in the email as well. Audio is cutting in and out, or hopefully you guys are doing okay. Somebody said audio is cutting in and out. I'll try to talk slowly. Sometimes that happens once in a while. It might be on your side. If you have network latency on your side, it might be the case. Okay. All right. So let's go in and let's just go ahead and start right in and at least introduce ourselves. I'm really excited about having Katja here with me. Katja and Rin run and founded the Commonwealth Center for Holistic Herbalism in Boston. I'll let her talk about herself for a second, and I will talk about myself hopefully for even a shorter second. Those of you who don't know me, I run a school in San Antonio that is an herbalism school that is also very much geared towards survival, remote environments, post-disaster environments, and that's really what I do. My background is in that. My background, I used to be a Special Forces medic, and that's my introduction to medicine about 25 years ago, and I was into herbalism back then, and I've been pretty much running and not looking back ever since, and kind of working my own version of integrative medicine. So that's me. Katja, thank you so much for being here, and can you talk a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here, you guys. So my husband, Rin, and I run the Commonwealth Center for Holistic Herbalism because it seems that herb schools always have to have really long names. We're right here in Boston. If you're baseball fans, you can pitch from our office, and if you're real good, hit Fenway Park from our school. And we have a 3-year clinical training program, but we also just purchased some property a little bit outside of Boston so that we can start doing a lot more primitive skills and a lot more wilderness first aid stuff in conjunction with Sam and Suchil, and my ultimate nefarious plan is to get them to move to New England. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, yeah, we might get out there. Vermont's looking really good. So anyway, we talk about it all the time. But so we've got more to talk about in terms of what we do. Here's briefly the slideshow PDF. Let me just say for a second, there is a bug, a weird bug that drives me crazy on PowerPoint, where when you convert it to PDF, sometimes some of the text doesn't convert, so you have blank pages. That's what happens. So you can click on that PDF, or you could type that in, and I was going to post that link for you in chat. But what you'll find is that some of the pages are blank. So I'm going to try to fix that during the downtime when Katja's talking, and then upload it. So by the end of this, hopefully, it'll be ready to go. Okay, the handout you already got. That's the link that Emily posted above. So that's going on. That gives you that. And then let's just talk through a couple of things going on. The first thing is tonight we're doing the weekly, we're doing the free webinar here with Katja and myself. And number 2 is coming up. I'm going to do a functional medicine talk with Kyla Helm, who is this got all messed up. It's functional medicine doctor, MD. She's an MD that I work with a lot. She offers a nutrition class for us as well, a clinical nutrition class, and she's awesome. So we're going to talk about functional medicine. We've got a webinar with Paul Bergner coming up on urban myths. It should be HERBAN. I don't know how that typo made it in. But urban myths and truths regarding common herbal remedies. And then the last one will be with Shana Lipner Grover on backyard botany and ethnobotany. So that's what's coming up. Classes coming up. You'll see this as well when you download the whole thing. But this is the Herbal Medic Basic. It's a 12-week course. Some of you, many of you that are in here probably have done this course. You can, if you've got something you want to say about it, good, bad, or otherwise. I always like feedback. So I think it's a good course. It's very live. It's very interactive. We send you herbs. We send you funnels to be able to learn how to do percolation tinctures. And there's even an online post-disaster scenario as a group thing at the end. It's in a classroom. We do all kinds of quizzes. There's all kinds of stuff going on. Respiratory system, that's a little more advanced, but it's not required that you have to have the basic to do that. That's coming up. Nutrition for Herbalists has already started this week. If you're interested in that, Emily can post the information on that, and you can talk to her about that as well. Okay, that actually has 3 instructors. Myself, Kyla Helm does a couple of lectures, and Katia Lamone, for those of you who know her, she's one of our instructors that works. She's a midwife herbalist that does our doula program and our Maiden Mother Crone, our family herbalism program as well. Clinical weeks coming up for those of you who have been through the basic or are in the basic. If you're starting it this January, you're still eligible to come down there, and that is in Quatemoc, and that's 5 days of intense clinical experience. Okay, and then in April we'll have our San Antonio one. We're going to have 2 more this year. We'll have them in the fall. But that's what's coming up. And then the Wahoofer. So I'll let Katja talk about what's going on out there, not only for her school in Boston, but their expansion out to Royalston.
So we will be hosting. Last year we had Sam, or this summer past, had Sam come up, and we did a wilderness herbal first responder certification course here in Boston, and it was fantastic. It was so great that we're going to do it again. This time we're going to do it on the new land, so there will be camping for everyone. We're currently hosting a fundraiser so that we will have a yurt and a kitchen all set up for everybody. So that will be August 15 through 24. If you have been wanting to get your Wilderness First Responder certification, or if you need to recert, then definitely consider coming on out there. It's about 90 minutes outside of Boston. Immediately following that program, there will also be a day on off-grid water filtration. That'll be Thursday, August 25th, and I'm noticing there's a bunch of typos on here. I apologize. And then there will be 3 days of off-grid food preservation that Suchil is going to teach, and that will be Friday through Sunday. So altogether, it's 2 weeks if you want to take the extra 2 modules after the Wilderness First Responder. And I really encourage you guys to check it out. It's going to be pretty great. There's a link there, and you can get more information about it at commonwealthherbs.com.
Great, and I take responsibility for those typos. I was in a rush there. I caught you at the very last trying to figure out what's wrong with my missing pages, so I didn't get that done very well. Last thing I want to talk about before we get into class, Herbal Medics chapter. So Herbal Medics is a non-profit, a 501c3, that myself and Suchil, my wife, founded about 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago now going on, and we are now at the point where we're opening up chapters to that, and very slowly, one at a time. And Katja and Rin are actually opening up the first chapter, which we're really excited about. It's a chance to be able to take from the Herbal Medics nonprofit. It's a chance for us to use herbal medicine as well as many of the other skills we practice, and we have students learning on the school side to be able to come out and volunteer and be a part of helping out communities by building slow sand water filtration, for instance, out of the materials that are there. We're not taking down any stuff in boxes. We're going into places that are really remote, like remote Nicaragua is an example of where we were last year, and teaching even blacksmithing and metalworking to, we worked with indigenous, with the Rama Indians in the middle of the jungle in their little villages, where they really wanted to be able to use metal they still hunt with spear and bow and arrow. So things like that. And then of course herbal medicine. So we do herbal clinics, working with everything from common, waterborne diseases all the way to leishmaniasis, to cellulitis and infections, to all kinds of stuff. So stuff that you would a lot of times not see in other places, or stuff you would see in a clinic, but never, very rarely get a chance to really work with herbs on a really intense basis. We've got a lot of people coming in. There's been times where we'll have 100 people a day, in a clinic that we're running with maybe 6 to 8 students. That's a lot of work. You're working from about 5 in the morning until 10 at night, and then all of a sudden a family shows up that walked 25 miles, and you're not going to turn them away, and you're up till midnight. So running an apothecary, all of that. So that's a really good experience. And so Herbal Medic chapters are a chance for us to be able to start to expand out into communities that are out there in the U.S. primarily, and serve them and have chapters that actually know what's going on in their own area on the ground much better than we could possibly know here in San Antonio, Texas, or wherever we are. So it's really a great chance to do that, and also for us to set up a good standard operating procedure kind of across the board, and increase all of our own knowledge and experience as we do that. So really excited about that, and just wanted to put that out here. If you're interested and want to be informed, want to join a chapter by next spring, at the point that we really have this one solidly set up with Katja and Rin on the East Coast, we'll be working with other people. There's a lot of people that want to do this, but I want to do it. We're going to do it, in a really in a manner that allows us all to benefit from it, and not just open up a whole bunch of chapters at once. We're going to do it in a way that everybody's on the same sheet of music. So if you're interested in that, check out that Facebook page, or email us, Emily or Suchel at thehumanpath.com, if you want more information on it. And you don't do Facebook, which that's great. If you don't, good for you. It can be a horrible waste of time, but it also can be very useful sometimes. So that's it, basically. That's what I have to say. Anything else you want to say, Katja, before we get going?
I think we're ready to start.
Okay, so I'll just talk for a few minutes here and then turn it over to Katja on all of her, so she's got a lot of stuff to talk about too. But I just wanted to say, to start off with, that when you're talking herbal first aid, don't forget the words first aid, first of all. First aid, that is a huge part of this. You have to understand some basics of basic first aid, which means you have to understand a little bit about everything from at least minor trauma all the way up to major trauma, to minor acute illness. These are clinical skills that go beyond just knowing about herbs, right? So you have to start there. And this is how I do it anyway. This is how I feel. So your biggest skill that you could possibly carry around in your pack or your biggest first aid resource that you could possibly carry around is really it's in your head. It's not just in your pack. It's what you know. You have to know what it is you're going to do. If we tell you, if you look at that chart where I've got the whole A, B, C, D, E, F thing, and you look at it and you probably see things on there that you have no idea how to use, unless you have this training, there's no way you know how to use an endotracheal tube, and that's fine. The whole chart that I made for this is not meant to be for every single person, but it's meant to be for the person just on the street, just a lay person who just has a very basic understanding of bandaging some boo-boos, all the way up to the person who has a lot of training, who's an ER nurse, or even an ER doc, or paramedic, or whatever. So pick wherever that is. Find your tools, put them in your kit, and use them, and know how to use them, because you can carry around the coolest, most wonderful kit in the world with all the fanciest doodads you can think of, but if you don't know how to use it, then you may as well not be carrying anything. unless you're maybe carrying something around for a doctor who's next to you. You're betting on the fact that when you have a first aid situation, you're going to have a doctor standing next to you who knows how to use all this junk you're carrying around in your pack. So this is really important. Plus, you have to be able to access your gear, know how to access it, and you need to know how to pack it, and you need to be able to reuse your material all the time, all your first aid kit stuff. Okay, so that's the main, just to start off with, that's what I have to say about the kit in general before turning it over to Katja to talk.
I would say, too, to jump onto that sort of the most important place that, for my money, the most important place that you can spend your training time is getting some really good bandaging technique. It really matters to bandage a wound neatly and effectively, because you don't know when the next time is going to be that that person is going to have medical attention. So being able to wrap a good bandage of all the different types of bandaging is super, super important. So get yourself Wilderness First Responder certified, practice it all the time, or get a friend who's a nurse or an EMT who has good skills to show you. But whatever you do, definitely learn that, and learn some good nursing skills. I don't mean like go and become an RN, but learn how to take care of a person who has a fever, learn how to take care of a person who has the flu, or a person who is has dehydration or diarrhea. Some of these really basic everyday things are really the things that you're most likely to see in a disaster situation. So make sure that you can do those things, and those skills are very, very accessible. Spend some time learning that and really getting it into your head, and of course, good level-headed skills, right? So being able to keep your cool in an emergency is also really important. So those are the things that you can't put into the kit. They're the things that you have to carry around in your own self. But then why would we bother to carry a kit at all? So first of all, if you think about the places that you go every day, and just take a second to do that, if something happened, do you know where to find a first aid kit there? So I live in Boston, and I ride the T, that's our subway, a lot, and there's no first aid kits. I mean, I'm sure by law there's first aid kits somewhere, but you can't see them. And if there was an accident, you don't know that somebody's going to be there to unlock whatever compartment the first aid kit is in. So think about where you are in your life. Do you even know if there's a first aid kit around? And if there was one, would you know how to use the things that were inside it? Or would it have the things that you need? So if you carry your own kit every day, every time you leave the house, the answer to those questions is yes. It's very likely to have what you need, and you will know how to use it. I don't know if I can flip the next page here. Thank you.
You can't, I can.
Oh yeah, I see it now. Good. So what you carry depends on where you are, and it depends on what you and other people will be doing there. So I have, and we're gonna see pictures of them in a little bit, but I have 3 different first aid kits that I take with me depending on what I'm gonna do. I have what I call the tiny carry, I have my daily carry, and then I have my street kit, or so my long trip carry. So if you're going to a soccer game with your kids, you know, where are you going to be? What's the weather going to be like? What are the types of injuries that you expect at a soccer game? Versus if you are going on a long hike, or if you're going to respond to a disaster, right? Think about the places that you go every day. Do you live in the desert? Do you live in the north where there's a lot of snow? Do you live in a place where walking barefoot is dangerous? Those kinds of questions can help you know what you need to pack. This time of year, I always have some of those hand warmers, the little pouches that you shake, and they have chemicals in there that warm up. This time of year, I always carry those with me because it's cold where I am. But I'm betting that in San Antonio, probably Sam doesn't have to carry hand warmers with him every time he leaves the house, because he's probably not very likely to have to deal with, maybe it's colder than I think there, but probably not likely to have to deal with that kind of cold. Also, what kind of people are in the place that you're going? Is it people who likely have access to resources? Are you likely to be in a place where there's a lot of homeless people? That's going to be a determination not just in what types of supplies you carry, but also in what types of herbs you choose. And how accessible is conventional medical care? If you're going to go and work at a first aid tent at a festival that is way out in the boonies, then that would also change what kinds of things you carry with you, because you're going to have to be self-sustaining there. You're not very likely to get resupplied very easily way out in the boonies. And then what kind of training you have mandates what you're going to carry as well. What sort of injuries do you feel comfortable working with, and what sort of tools do you feel comfortable working with? If you've never dealt with a broken arm before, you might not be the person who deals with a broken arm. That might not be in your first aid scenario. You may have plenty of band-aids and deal with blisters and splinters and all kinds of stuff, and that's super important work. But you might decide to draw a line at a certain place and say, if I come across that type of injury, that's out of my scope of practice. So you don't need to carry stuff for that because you don't know how to use it. There's nothing wrong with that. Carry what you know, work with what you know how to work with, and then get training so that you can continue to grow those skills. It's always better to pack a smaller kit of things that you know how to use well than a large kit of things that you aren't familiar with. Plus, it's great to pack things that have multiple uses. Less is more. And depending on where you are, you might have supplies and resources available in your environment that you don't know about. Or that if you think ahead, you can recognize that will be available. For example, maybe you're going to do some work in a city and you know that you can duck into a drugstore if you run out of something. Or maybe you're going to be in a place and a lot of other people are bringing supplies, so you don't have to bring every single thing. If you use your kit for everyday injuries, then you'll know exactly how to work with it. Every time that you get a cut or a scrape, go to your first aid kit and get out what you need, so that when there really is an emergency, you know where everything is. You're very comfortable moving around in your kit. Every time that you get into your kit, you're going to realize, oh, it's awkward for me to get the Band-Aids if I put them in that pocket. And you will optimize it a little more each time. Also, if you are in your kit all the time, then your materials and supplies stay fresh. And when you run out of something, you know right away. And you also learn what sorts of things you use more and what sorts of things you don't use very often. And then again, always continue your training so that the skills you have stay fresh and so that you can expand your scope. All right, so when we're thinking about making a first aid kit, we need to think about how are we going to carry this stuff around, right? Even before we really think about exactly what's going to go inside, we know that we need a bag. So how do we pick a good bag? The first thing is that you want a bag that's very comfortable to carry. If you're going to be in a situation where you have to run, then whatever bag you think you might want to use, run in it and make sure that you really can run. You want a bag that's a good size. You don't want it to be too big because you will stuff way too much stuff in there and it's going to be heavy. You don't want it to be too small because you want to be able to open it and root around when you need to. Definitely recognize that depending on where you are, you may have to carry your pack and a person if that person is injured. So packing something too heavy really is a downfall. Make sure that you can carry at least a child and your pack whenever that's an option. Let's see, you want something that's going to be reasonably waterproof and reasonably weatherproof for obvious reasons. And then you want something that has an appropriate appearance. And what I mean by that is if you have a bright orange jump kit with a big EMT symbol on it or something like that, that's all well and good, but you might be in a situation where you don't really want to stand out, where you'd like to have a little bit more subtlety in the way that you operate. And so in that case, you probably don't want a giant neon orange bag. So think about when you're going out, what type of situation you're going out into. Also, let's say that you're going to go out and do some work in the homeless community. You may not want your swankiest North Face pack, even though you really love it. You might want some beat up pack from the thrift shop, just because that's gonna be more comfortable for the people that you're working with. So choosing the right bag for the situation that you're in. Then you're going to need some containers for the inside. First of all, you know, you're going to have band-aids and bandages, and we're going to go through all those things. But you can't just have them all loose inside the bag. That's going to be very difficult to maintain. So Ziploc bags are super, super useful on the inside. Keep things organized that way, but also it keeps them weatherproof. So have one Ziploc bag with all your Band-Aids, another Ziploc bag with your roller gauze. That way, if you're out in the rain and you're going to help somebody and you open up your kit, all your Band-Aids don't get soaked. Um, and then we're also going to be packing up some herbs in here. And so whenever we're taking herbs along with us, then there's the question, plastic versus glass. And plastic, oh, I'm seeing some sound problems here. Oh, but most people are all right. I'm just going to keep going.
Yes, we're fine on that. And so for those of you, well, I don't need to tell you verbally since you can hear it, but I'm going to anyway. I'm going to start up a conference call number.
Great. So a lot of people, and let me tell you, I was one of them, really don't like plastic for tinctures. And I was very hesitant to make the switch to plastic. And I carried glass for a long time. Glass is heavy and glass is breakable. And let me tell you, if you break glass in your first aid kit, that is a giant bummer. So first I will say, if you are committed to glass, then make sure that you put your glass into a waterproof container that is not a Ziploc bag, because if your glass breaks, then it's likely to puncture the Ziploc bag. So have something tougher than that, and in the pictures you're going to see a couple examples of that. To put your glass in, and put a cloth, a thin piece of cloth in between any glass that's touching, so that you're reducing the likelihood of it breaking. But I really would encourage you to consider one of two types of plastic. One type is HDPE plastic, and another is Nalgene. And we've been doing some tests on these, and also Ed Smith at Herb Farm has done some tests. Actually, he's done 5- and 10-year tests on HDPE plastic, and we have found that there is not any kind of leaching, like plastic or chemical leaching into the tinctures that has been found. So, you know, I finally decided, okay, I feel comfortable with it. I switched to plastic. We have a link for a great place that you can get these things, and we will be adding those later, as well as some places to get bags and stuff like that. All right, so here is my beautiful cat, and also my 3 kits. So you can see, ooh, check out the green arrow. This is my large street kit, and this is my smaller everyday carry kit, and this is my tiny carry, and this little orange one fits into a cargo pocket. So that's pretty handy. Let's take a look and see what's inside these guys. Thank you, I love my cat too. All right, Sam, do you want to go through these?
No, I hate to interrupt what you're doing. Let's jump over to...
Great. So here is my tiny carry kit, and here we have all of the stuff laid out for you, and I'm going to talk about all the parts. But this is my husband's leg. This is his cargo pants, and as you can see, the entire tiny carry kit is in his cargo pocket, no problem. And this kit has everything that I love most, everything that I need for most of the stuff that could happen when I'm just out for a quick whatever, or when I don't have hands. So if you're going to some sort of situation where you don't have hands available to carry, maybe you're going to be out carrying the kids or whatever, or for example, here, at least at Fenway Park, you're not allowed to bring a bag into a baseball game, but there might be something that happens there, and you might wish you had your first aid kit. You're allowed to have stuff in your pockets, and so you could have a first aid kit in your pocket in that kind of a situation. So we can come back to the picture if you guys want to, but I'm going to go through a list of actually what's in it. I'm going to talk about it a little bit. In this tiny carry pouch, oh, and I'll also show you, this is, I think you can see it there, but this is an Eagle Creek. Um, Basically, it's one of those travel pouches, and you can get them at REI or EMS, or I'm sure they have a website, eaglecreek.com, I bet. They're super lightweight, and they come in lots of sizes, but this is their smallest size. So inside I carry one triangle bandage. You can pretty much do anything you got to do with a triangle bandage. I feel like it's like the multi-purpose tool of bandages. But I also really love roller gauze. I find it just super, super convenient, super easy to work with. Between roller gauze and a couple of gauze pads, I can wrap almost any kind of wound that comes across. And with roller gauze, you can deal with a head wound or a wound on a limb. You can pretty much, if you can reach it, you can wrap it with roller gauze. Gauze pads are good for stuffing in if there's extra bleeding. You can use them inside the roller gauze and then roll the gauze around. You can use them for washing. You can use them just to soak up blood. And then, of course, a handful of 1-inch Band-Aids. I don't carry a bunch of sizes of Band-Aids. Pretty much the 1-inch Band-Aid covers most of anything that's going to happen. So I don't bother with the ones that are smaller than that. Always carry gloves. Always, always carry gloves. Do not think you're not going to need gloves. You have to carry gloves. Gloves are very important. You don't want to get you on your person that you're working with, and you don't want to get the person that you're working with on you. So always wear gloves. And then also, you know that, yeah, I'll get to knives in just a minute. You know that a lot of people are allergic to latex, so we get nitrile gloves, the purple ones or the blue ones. Then you want to have a really good pair of tweezers. I personally love the Revlon brand tweezers, but just go to your local drugstore, go to the, ladies' eyebrow plucking section of the local drugstore. I'm not sure what they call that section. And check out all the different tweezers. Get a really good pair. Tweezers are a place that you should spend a couple of bucks. Get a good pair where the entire surface of the tweezers meets very well together, and a pair that has a point. When you're dealing with tiny splinters or any kind of other little bits of grit that you have to get out of an abrasion, definitely a good pair of tweezers is a good friend. A needle is really helpful for that as well. As far as gear, I carry my knife in another pocket when I'm using this kit. And my knife is a Cricut. It's an EMT knife, and there will be a picture of it. It has a Band-Aid. It has a seatbelt cutter and a window breaking point and a bunch of other features. But I do have a link to it, and we will see a picture of it in a little bit. All right, along with those things in the tiny carry pouch, I also always carry a small tin of pine resin salve, and let's see here. So that's, grab the little arrow here, that's this guy right here. Pine resin salve, when I make it, is the olive oil that has plantain infused in it. So plantain, that's Plantago Mayor or Plantago Lanceolata. It is drawing. It's very good for pulling stuff out of places, but also it breaks up biofilms and does a lot of great stuff to fight infections. So I really love something that has a nice base of plantain. Then I dissolve white pine resin into that oil, and you're going to do it, it's very, very simple. You just warm up that oil, toss the resin right in there. As it warms up, the resin will melt, and then strain out any bits of dirt. It is super that simple. And then you toss in your beeswax to make it a nice salve, the consistency that you like. There are lots of YouTube videos on exactly how to make a salve, but basically it is oil plus heat plus beeswax. There you go. So I always carry that around. You're not going to put salve on a big weepy wound. Salve is really good for abrasions or light lacerations. It's good for boils. It's good for any kind of chapped stuff, chafing, any of that stuff. Salve is really, really great for. So we carry that. Then I always carry a wound wash. And two of my favorites, one is Thayer's brand, Rose Water Witch Hazel Extract. So Thayer's makes a whole bunch of different witch hazel extracts, but I like the one that has rose water in it because rose is also wonderfully antiseptic and also quite cooling. So if you want to carry sort of a pre-made wash, this is a really excellent one. And you can use it on a sunburn, you can use it to wash wounds. It is really fantastic. Plus the rose smell itself is very calming. It's really, really lovely. So I'll either carry that just straight, or I will carry a tincture that is some combination of the following herbs that you'll see here. And if you are familiar, you'll see that these are all sort of antimicrobial, antiseptic herbs. With the exception of propolis. Propolis isn't an herb, it is, bees make it. It's pretty wonderful stuff. And to be honest, usually the combination, frankly, depends on what I have in stock. Any combination of this stuff would be great. Usnea is antiseptic. It also is really nice against fungus. Loosestrife also antiseptic, really nice against fungus and yeast stuff. And propolis as well, that's actually what bees use it for. They use it to protect their hive from mold or decomposition or any kind of disease. Yarrow, again, nice and antiseptic, but even better, it is going to help with bleeding. So that's a really nice way to add that effect right into your wound wash to help staunch the bleeding. And then Coptis trifolia, that is also known as gold thread. And that is our local berberine content plant. Actually, we have a couple, but gold thread is one that's around and easy to get, easy to use. It's always useful to have one of the berberine plants around. Berberine is really excellent, not just in its antimicrobial action in terms of a topical, but also even internally, that's really, really useful, especially if there's like a dysentery type situation going on. Of course, if there was a dysentery situation, I would hope I would have more than just my tiny carry kit with me, but you never know. So you can see here that what we're going for is something that will have the most possible application with the smallest number of items. And so this is, I'm thinking about how to wash out a wound, how to deal with dental abscesses, how to deal with any kind of broken, open skin, how to protect from infection. And if it was the witch hazel, also this is going to be really useful for a burn. Unless a burn was infected, I really wouldn't put this tincture combination on it because that would be super unpleasant. I would use plain water if I didn't have the rose witch hazel. So then I always carry around with me some honey packets. Honey packets are very, very handy. Yeah, Kate, gold thread is, I'm not certain that it's endangered. It certainly is, I would say, rare. I happen to have a lot of it on my land, so it's fine for that to be harvested here. But any of the berberine plants, barberry or anybody else, Oregon grape, would be great. Okay, Manuka honey. Let me just say that any honey is awesome, as long as it's actual honey. It's just that they did the studies on Manuka honey, so that's why Manuka gets all the credit. There you can buy little honey packets. So in this kit here, I have this one. This is a little honey packet, but there are other ones that are sort of like they just snap and the honey comes right out, and those are also very handy. I believe the brand is Wellspoon. I will check that out. Honey is just fantastic, especially for burns. you can really wetter spoon. That's right. Thank you, Tim Houston. Um, you can deal with all kinds of burns with honey, and it's even this summer I had a woman with a burn that I didn't tell her until much later, but the burn was, it turned my stomach. It was quite a burn, and we were in a wilderness situation, and there wasn't any care, but if there had been, she would have rejected it. Um, so it was me and a bunch of honey, and we used that rose water, the Thayer's rosewater witch hazel, and we used lavender essential oil in that honey, and it healed beautifully. So I just can't say enough about honey packets. Always carry some with you, and they're little. They're about the size of a ketchup packet that you would get at, a fast food restaurant. Do not get honey packets from a fast food restaurant because most of them are not actually honey. They're like corn syrup with honey flavoring or whatever. So you want to make sure that you have actual honey in your little packet. But the Wetherspoon packets are really fantastic. And also good for wounds and abrasions, just really fantastic. Then I always carry lobelia tincture. Lobelia tincture, the plant Lobelia inflata, is wonderful for anaphylaxis. It's good for asthma attacks and even severe asthma attacks, and it's a muscle relaxant. So I have an anaphylactic allergy. It is the world's most bizarre anaphylactic allergy. I am allergic to marijuana. And so I have lots of practice with using lobelia for anaphylaxis. I do it a few times a month because I live in a city and you can be walking down the street and somebody is smoking on the street, and then presto, I get to try out my lobelia. So I have a lot of confidence in lobelia for my anaphylaxis. And I have a lot of confidence for using lobelia in a situation where an EpiPen would not be available. Of course, if somebody had their EpiPen and they wanted to use it, that's what you would do. But if you were in a situation where one was not available, or where one was available but the person declined it, then lobelia would be a great option. Lobelia, if you take a high dose, is emetic. That means it will cause vomiting. But that's actually a benefit because the body prioritizes that vomiting above the anaphylaxis and above an asthma attack. So if a small dose of lobelia doesn't help with the anaphylaxis, take a large dose and go ahead and vomit. That's not very fun, but if you don't have a rescue inhaler available and it's either vomiting or having a really terrible asthma attack, then vomiting looks pretty great. Lobelia tincture is also wonderful topically as a muscle relaxant. So for any kind of spasm or any other kind of muscle pain, it's going to double there as a liniment that you can rub right in. So as you see in this teeny tiny little pouch that fits in a cargo pocket, you are able to deal with a lot of situations. All right.
Thank you, Kutch. There's a couple of questions. I don't know if you noticed in the Q&A.
I don't see them, actually.
Oh, you can't see the Q&A?
Oh, now I can.
Okay. There's a question about the Thayers.
Yeah, hold on.
Or if not, I can copy and paste them down into chat.
Actually, I'm having trouble seeing them. There's a...
Okay, here, let me copy and paste them down into chat here for you. Okay, so first question from Shelley. Does the Thayers have aloe in it?
Yes, I believe that it does. When Sam talks next, I'll get up and read the label. I don't love aloe all the time, but I do love Thayers. A high dose of lobelia. What is considered a high dose of lobelia? That's going to depend on the person. So I am almost 6 feet tall, about 180 pounds, and I tend a little bit towards stagnant constitution. So for me, a high dose is maybe 2 dropper. A normal everyday dose of lobelia is about 1 to 2 droppers full. A high dose for me would be probably half an ounce. For my husband, who is about 5'4" and probably weighs about 110 pounds, and who also has a very fast metabolism, for him, he probably would get nauseous at maybe half of a dropper full. So, that there is a little bit of trial and error there. But the worst case scenario is that you'll throw up. So I always would err on the side of a dose that was too high, because, yes, lobelia tincture. I would always err on the side of a dose that's a little bit too high, because the worst case scenario isn't too bad. To administer it for asthma, you would do that orally. So you do need to get to the person while they still can put something in their mouth. Again, if that person has a rescue inhaler, absolutely help them get their rescue inhaler. But if there's a situation where that's not available, then go for this and give it a shot. Janice says she can take 5 drops. Do you vomit after 5 drops? I'm gonna bet that she's saying yes. Yes. So I've heard of other people who can take very tiny doses like that and can get nauseous at that point. So for everybody, that's going to be one that you sort of test it out and see, and go with that. Yes. The worst case scenario, Shelley, is that the person's going to vomit.
Great. Yeah, I just put a note in there about Garrya species because I've grown to like it even better than lobelia as a smooth muscle relaxant, but it's not really very available, except in certain parts of the U.S., Southwest, and down here in Texas, of course, and we find it a lot. So not really very useful for folks if they don't know how to identify it or use it. But just know there are other smooth muscle relaxants out there, but lobelia is certainly very, very useful. And the old, it used to be that people used the seed, and the seed is very, very potent. But now really it's more the aerial parts of the leaves that are used, and maybe better so because it allows a little bit more, of a wider spectrum, I guess I want to say, wider shift in spectrum for being able to make dosage errors. You don't want to. It's one of those you want to be kind of careful about.
Yeah. Caitlin, you're wondering about when people vomit. There's a time window. It's not quite that immediate. It may be quick, but you have a moment. And Keela, you're asking whether or not they need to be able to swallow it. I think that answer is yes.
Yeah. Well, you can absorb it as well sublingually. It'll work sublingually, but you're going to do that orally anyway, right? I mean, you're still going to get that.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you widening out the...
Yes. Oh, did that for everybody? I'm sorry. I'll put that back.
That's fine. If that's what you need, that's no problem.
No. I'll put that back for everybody. We want to make the slides as big as possible for y'all. Okay. So there's probably a lot more questions about lobelia, and definitely I find lobelia to be such a wonderful, useful plant. So definitely that would be one to research a lot on, and also to just experiment with yourself and see how that works for you. And also on your friends, because that's always fun, but please warn them. What will happen? Okay, so how effective of an alternative is lobelia to an EpiPen? I no longer carry an EpiPen. I haven't carried an EpiPen for 12 years. So, yeah. I can't guarantee that for every other human body, but for my body, it is not only as effective, but way cooler because it doesn't suck like an EpiPen does.
Yeah, I would say to that too, that we're always on the search, right, in herbalism, especially on the side of first aid, of finding herbs that will work for those really acute care management situations. And that's a tough one because you can't just experiment with that. You can't just experiment with a rattlesnake bite or with somebody who's in full anaphylaxis, right? A full-blown airway compromise. You have to have a patent airway, so and hopefully epi is your first choice. But that said, I'll tell you a few things that I know other herbalists have used, and this is one of those where you have to look at other people. You have to look at data around the country and what other people use. I know Michael Cottingham swears by a little bit of salt, sea salt, as for anaphylaxis on the tongue, which I think sounds incredible. I mean, it's incredible that would work, and he's used, he says, several times. Another one that I believe he's used, or someone has told me they have used successfully, has been ephedra, which certainly would be understandable as well. We have really, really potent smooth muscle relaxers like our Datura species, of course, which has atropine and scopolamine in it for really bad asthma attacks. This is what, even still in some developing nations, you'll find herbalists using it and smoking it, and some here. Michael Cottingham is another example of someone who uses that very, very carefully. That's something you cannot, that you don't just go out and pick some Datura and use it. I use it externally a lot. For neuralgia, really heavy-duty neuralgia, but that is much safer than picking leaves, even if they've been sitting out a season and being blasted by the UV, which is how I know some people like to do it, and then actually smoking them, or even just taking a puff and not even inhaling, just taking a puff and then blowing that puff into somebody's mouth who's having a really severe asthma attack and them inhaling. And it works. It certainly works. It's an incredibly useful smooth muscle relaxant, but here we get back into dosage because we go between helping and either putting somebody into a full-blown, dissociative, hallucinogenic, trip where they wake up 3 weeks later and don't know where they are, or even killing them. So you have to bear all that in mind.
And of course, also that when you're working with people who are not you, then you're always going to do what they want to do. So if somebody has their rescue inhaler, or if somebody has their EpiPen, don't be like, dude, don't use that. Use this herb instead. We're going to do what the person that we're working with wants to do. But in a situation where you don't have those other things available, or where for whatever reason you've decided you don't want to use those other things, this really has been a wonder for me. As somebody asked if it's safe for children, I would feel comfortable trying it with a child. Again, you're going to have to check for that child and make sure what that dose is for that child. All right, let's move to the daily carry, because guess what? There's going to be more herbs in there, so that'll be fun. So my daily carry kit is a shower bag from REI, and it will fit into the laptop pouch of my courier bag that I carry with me wherever I go. As you can see, it has more stuff in it. So let's sort of dig in. Oh, and there's a picture of my knife there as well. So let's sort of dig into all the good stuff that's in this one. On the bandages and gear, you'll see that it has most of the same stuff. There's triangle bandages, there's roller gauze, there's 2 sizes. There's assorted sizes of gauze pads. A self-occlusive bandage is pretty great. Self-occlusive means that it sticks to itself. So you can put on whatever kind of dressing you want to put on, and then put that self-occlusive bandage over it, and that will help keep it protected, help keep dirt out. It helps to keep, if you're like in a rain situation, it'll help keep that better. They're not entirely waterproof, I don't think, but it's going to be helpful. If you work with animals, you might know this as vet wrap. And it's fine to use vet wrap, but vet wrap has latex in it. So if you're going to use it with other people, then it's worth getting some latex-free ones as well. However, vet wrap is way cheaper. So if you don't have a latex allergy, definitely get vet wrap. It's cheaper. Plus it comes in fun colors. I like to carry a roll of paper tape. If you get a bunch of medics in a room and talk about first aid tape, there will be 17 different opinions about what kind of first aid tape is the best kind of first aid tape. And When I'm only going to carry one, it's usually paper tape. The drawback to that is that if somebody turns an ankle, that's not going to do the trick. So sort of you need to figure what's the right thing for you. But for my daily carry, I like the regular old paper tape. I carry a couple of Tegaderm. They're a kind of bandage that you can see through and that has some degree of transporousness. So again, this is going to be really useful if you don't know when the person's going to get care again. I only use those in real specific situations because they are quite expensive. I carry some Steristrips. This would be for if somebody needs stitches. I'm not going to sit there and set stitches for multiple reasons. First of all, I probably have more things to do besides just that. But most importantly, because I'm not in a sterile environment. And setting stitches in a not sterile environment is like Russian roulette. So I don't want to do that. Steristrips are good and strong, and they'll get you through in a lot of situations. A nice compression bandage is also really excellent, but you can't necessarily do a compression bandage if the cut is, let's say, a horizontal cut on your thigh. You can't really compress that. So Steristrips are great. Again, a handful of 1-inch Band-Aids. In my daily carry kit, I have 5 pair of nitrile gloves because there's more room. Not pictured is Narcan. In our area, we have a lot of problems with opiate overdose. So having Narcan with you is really, really useful. Where we live, the city of Boston just does free Narcan trainings for anybody who wants them. So if that is an issue where you live, then check out and see if you can get Narcan trained. It's just a 2-hour training, and then you are approved to carry Narcan and administer it. So that's pretty great. I have some extra gear in this kit because I've got extra space. So I carry a small set of trauma shears. That's for if you need to cut somebody's clothing, for example. Basically, if you need to cut anything, they'll cut through a whole lot of stuff. Tweezers and a needle, of course. I carry a Sharpie. Sharpies are great because if you're in a first aid situation, sort of a first response situation, and you know that this person is going to transport to some higher form of care, or you don't know that and you don't know when you're going to see them again, either way, you can write with a Sharpie right on their bandage what date and time you set it, and you can circle or make some other kind of mark about where the actual wound is. You can do all kinds of stuff with a Sharpie. Another thing is if you're watching inflammation, let's say a person had a bee sting or some other thing that is inflaming and you're going to be dealing with that over a period of time, and you're watching to see how that inflammation goes and if it's growing or if you're managing to keep it under control. It's real hard to do that just by watching it because the size changes slowly and maybe you don't realize that it's getting bigger until it's really getting bigger. If you draw a circle around that inflammation with your good old Sharpie, then you know for sure which direction that inflammation is going. There's not any question. So Sharpies are super useful. I always carry a few extra Ziplocks because if you need to dispose of some trash, especially if you are working in areas where there are lots of homeless people, throwing gloves right into the trash means that you've contaminated any food that might be in that trash can. And there are some people who will eat the food out of the trash can. So that food wasn't very clean to begin with, but it probably doesn't need my used nitrile gloves to be touching it. So if you're going to throw something away that has any kind of body substances on it, stick it in a Ziploc first. I always carry ponytail holders. I have a lot of hair, so I like to have extra for myself, but also if you're dealing with a person who has long hair and they have a wound, and the wound is on the head or on the face or the neck or shoulders or whatever, it's really handy to be able to pull their hair back and put it in a ponytail holder so that you can work on them without having their hair all over the place. And especially if it's windy and whatever else, it's, again, fantastically helpful. Plus, In a MacGyver situation, there's a million things you can do with a ponytail holder. A plastic mirror is also very handy for a million different reasons, but in particular, if somebody has something in their eye, it's way better to give them a mirror and let them get it out of their eye, if that's at all possible. And like I said, this time of year, I always carry hand warmers. Again, in this case, I generally have my knife in another pocket. It has a pocket that it lives in my carrier bag that is very easily accessible. Part of the reason for that is that some places I go, I'm not allowed to have a knife. And if I keep my knife in an easily accessible place, then I can remember to take it out of my pack. But sometimes I just have my first aid kit just always with me, and then if I end up in a place where I can't have a knife, my whole kit might get confiscated. So easier to keep that out. So then we can think about herbs. Again, you'll see these first ones. The pine resin salve is the same. I really just can't live without pine resin salve. Did I mention that it's also antimicrobial? It's just amazing stuff. Pine resin is fantastic. That's another one. If you are new to herbalism, or if you're just new to pine, really spend some time researching pine resin. It's fantastic. And then again, the same wound wash, the Manuka honey packets, the lobelia tincture, that's my base. Don't leave home without it. Added extra into here is some lavender essential oil. Lavender essential oil is useful as a muscle relaxant. It's good as a nervous system relaxant. I love it for burns. It's an antiseptic. It's best to be diluted. Sometimes as a muscle relaxant, especially on a bad spasm, I might use it neat, but in general, I'll use it diluted. For the nervous system, I'll have a person just smell it. For burns, I like to put I like to put a few drops of lavender essential oil right into the honey that goes onto the burn. As an antiseptic, I might add, let's say that I'm out and about and I get myself a squirt bottle of Poland Spring or whatever kind of water. You can open that up, put a few drops of lavender essential oil, and now that bottle of spring water has just become a wound wash, an antiseptic wound wash. So that's really wonderful. Also, with that lavender essential oil, that bottle of water becomes very soothing to a sunburn. Also good. I'll go through these last two and then I'll get those questions. The next is chamomile tincture. If I really only have one other tincture, chamomile is just so useful. You can use it for any kind of cramping, for indigestion. It's great for panic attacks, but you can also use it for fevers. Chamomile you can give to small children, you can give to elderly. Every so often you'll find a person who has a chamomile allergy. It's pretty rare. I would say that I see it maybe 1 in every 400 people. That's a pretty weird statistic because, of course, the people that I see are people who are coming to an herbalist, so I don't really know what the general populace is, but it's not something that you see terribly often. So chamomile is a reasonably safe carry. People who are allergic to it will know, and otherwise it's just got such a wide range of uses. And then I carry this one formula that is somewhat specialized here. And these might be plants that you're a little less familiar with. Ghost pipe, Monotropa uniflora, you may also see it called Indian pipe, is really lovely for managing anxiety, but also for managing pretty big pain. So I really love it for that. Solomon seal is great for joint stuff, fascia pain. Also good for people who are having difficulty adapting to difficult situations. And then sage tincture is also really lovely for folks who are feeling overwhelmed. So this combination is actually for panic. But I would also use it for physical pain. It's not going to be the same as something like Jamaica dogwood or wild lettuce or stuff. But it is really useful for physical pain as well as for psychological distress. Let me look at these questions now here. I don't know how you see these. I'm sorry, I'm kind of new to this.
Oh, no problem. I've got them pasted down here too. Hold on.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Pine resin salve. Oh, yes. Okay, super, super easy. So pine resin is the white goop that you find on a pine tree. It'll be where there's a break in the bark, because the pine resin is the way that the tree is making a scab for itself. So the most important thing there is that if you are going to harvest some, keep in mind that the pine resin is the scab for the tree. So don't take it all. Leave the scab on the tree and just take the extra. So you're going to take that glop. It's going to have some dirt in it. You're not going to worry about it. You're going to take that glop. You're going to warm up some olive oil or whatever kind of oil you like best. I like to use plantain infused olive oil. You're going to warm that gently. Don't let it boil. Glop that whole glop of pine resin right into it and stir it around and let it melt. There's going to be bits of dirt at the bottom. It's okay. You're going to strain that out. So once you've got it all melted, just run it through a strainer or some cheesecloth to strain out that dirt, and then put it back on the heat, low heat. Toss in some beeswax so that the beeswax will melt. Again, you're never going to boil that oil. Let the beeswax melt and let it cool off. And once it has cooled off, if you find that it is too gloppy and you would like it to be thicker, then you can put in more beeswax. And if you find that it's too thick, then you can put in more oil. You need to warm it up again. So those are just the general ways to make a salve, and you can find more information on how to make a salve. You can just YouTube how to make a salve. But basically it is just oil, pine resin, beeswax, warm them up, don't let them boil, and then cool them off. Kate was asking which of these herbs would I use topically for bee stings. In my daily carry, I would probably use the lavender. I might also use lobelia. Can lavender essential oil be used for shock? Yes, but I would use the pipe Solomon seal and sage tincture instead. If you didn't have that, then I might use the lavender, especially because the person doesn't have to ingest it; they only have to smell it. So that would be a useful. Ghost pipe, Solomon seal, and sage tincture in equal parts. Yes, those are in equal parts. It's worth also noting that both ghost pipe and Solomon seal, I don't believe either are endangered, but both are rare. We're real fortunate to have a lot of Solomon seal in this part of the country, but in other parts of the country it's not super common. These are low-dose plants. You don't need high doses of them. So that's wonderful because they're rare plants. They are not, to the best of my knowledge, harmful at high doses. It's just that a high dose isn't necessary. That's great. Shaylin asks if all pine varieties are useful. In our area, we have white pine, but we also have red pine, and we have some other piney things. And I've gotten glop off of other ones, that's the technical term, glop. No, I've gotten resin off of other trees as well, but white pine is my favorite. If I were in the West, I would use pinyon pine. I don't know where you are, but check out the types of pine where you are, and then go for it.
What part of Texas are you in, Shaylin? Yeah, so to the east of you is where you would go. What's up there? I know a lot of loblollies back there now, but what was the original pine growth there in the piney woods if you go way east of there? And then up to the west also. I'm not sure. I can't remember. It's not Ponderosa though. I don't know about cedar, Sandy, but I do. Juniper here, the juniper, the ash juniper, especially, does have really good resin when you can find it. It's just it doesn't produce it in very big amounts.
Christopher asks how you get folks warmed up to using herbs during emergency situations. Obviously not pushing them into anything. Yes, that's awesome. So what I usually say is, first I will say, I tell them my name. Hi, my name is Katya. I know some first aid. Would you like help? And sometimes they say no. And then you say, all right, if you need anything, I'll be wherever you're going to be. So first, you get their consent that they would like help at all. The next thing is I just talk to them about everything. I say, well, it looks like you've got a laceration here. What I'd like to do is clean that up, and then I'd like to put a bandage on it. Do you feel okay with that? And as long as they consent to that, then I'll go ahead, and while I'm washing it, I'll say something like, okay, well, I have this wound wash here. It has a nice rose scent, and it has some rose in it. And so I'm going to go ahead and rinse this off with that, and then I will see if there's any dirt that we need to get out, and then we'll wrap it up. So mostly I just sort of tell them everything that I'd like to do before I do it, and I check in and I say, does that sound good to you? And if they say, what, you're going to put honey on my burn? Are you crazy? That's the weirdest thing I've ever heard. I say, all right, no problem. Why don't I just wash it off and leave it at that? So just always be ready to leave everything up to them.
Yeah, I would say to that too, running a survival school, it's very common that there are injuries, burns, minor usually, burns and lacerations, people cutting themselves and things like that. It's usually minor, scorpion stings, and it's one of the first things I usually ask is, okay, do you want the orthodox or do you want herbs? And it used to be that it was about 50-50, and now it's pretty much about 100%. Everybody's like, oh no, herbs. So not that we go to herbs, obviously, before we treat the issue that's a first aid problem first. It's not like we just go start throwing herbs at a deep laceration or anything like that. But if herbs can be incorporated into tissue healing, inflammation, all of the things that we're talking about, then that's I think makes it much more effective.
And then Shauna was asking whether ghost pipe, Solomon seal are safe for a nursing mother. I feel comfortable with that. I also feel comfortable with sage for a nursing mother in this particular blend because this is really going to be a few drops. This isn't going to be a high dose. So part of that is that when I was nursing, I had really more than enough milk, so that wasn't a concern for me. I can imagine that there would be a woman who maybe is sort of right borderline on just barely making enough milk, who might feel that even a couple of drops of sage would be too much. But I would probably feel comfortable with that in most situations. But you could totally make it with just the ghost pipe and the Solomon seal, and I don't see any problem with that for a nursing mom. All right. So let's go ahead and move into the bigger kit. We may not make it all the way through this, but I want to at least make sure that you have a chance to see it. So my street kit, or my sort of long trip carry, this is a larger kit, and we can take this into the street to work with homeless people. I use this during protests or riots. It's useful in a natural disaster, although in that case I would want a resupply point. I wouldn't really want to be out only with this kit in the case of a natural disaster. I'd want to take this kit from a station to range out and then go back to get resupplied. Or this would be useful on an evacuation or a long trip. Keep in mind that whatever you're going to have for your long carry or your street kit, that you're going to be carrying it for a long time. You're going to be tired. You may also have to carry another person. So even though you're going to want to carry all the gear in the world, definitely constantly be balancing that with the fact that you may have to carry this and another person. And practice that. For real, practice that. Practice putting your kit on your front while you carry someone on your back. Practice all those things so that you know for sure that you can do it. Your first aid kit isn't going to do any good if when you get into an emergency situation you can't actually carry it. I had said earlier about a good tough bag if you're going to carry glass. That's this one right here. This also is a very small shower and shave kit. from REI, and it's made out of Cordura, so it's pretty tough. It's waterproofed on the inside, and if glass broke in that bag, it would keep the glass contained so that it didn't get glass pieces into my first aid gear. But like I said, I've switched to plastic for the most part. Okay, and then this bag here is a second one of those little Eagle Creek bags, and you'll see how I have that broken out. But I just use those for my herbals. This has got all the tinctures in it, and this has the salve and the honey and stuff like that in it. So let's take a look here. You see we have this all broken out. So I'll sort of let you take a look at that, and then we'll look at the list and we can kind of go back and forth.
I have to point out too that you have to be careful. You see this label right here? This actually will give you superpowers, so you have to be careful not to use that unless you can be responsible.
Actually, that's also a really good point. So you see here that I have two labels. I have a regular old Red Cross on it, and then I have my handy dandy, really awesome Herbal Medics patch right on my kit. Both of these are Velcroed on my kit with plain black Velcro, so they can be removed at any time. If you are going to do work in the streets at a protest or in a riot or something like that, you might not want to be identified as a medic. There are times when that would be dangerous. So you want to be able to remove any of your identifying markers very easily. So having any of that kind of stuff on industrial Velcro is a really great idea, because you can just pull them right off if you need to. All right, let's just check out this list real quick. Oh, whoops, this is Sam's travel kit. Hold on. There we go. Okay, we'll go back to those pictures in a minute. All right, so we check out here. We've got the bandages and gear, and you'll see it's all the same bandages and gear. It's just a lot more of them. And then I have here a SAM splint. A SAM splint is it's a special splint that Sam invented. It's in fact it is a super bendy splint that you can bend in about 57 different ways to take care of. Really, I think you can splint anything with it. You can splint a C-spine with it. You can splint anything with it. It's pretty fantastic. And so those are really handy to have. I make a note here. I do carry some alcohol swabs. I only use them for cleaning instruments. I don't like to clean people with alcohol swabs. I try not to get alcohol into a wound if at all possible. But Katya, didn't you say that you have a wound wash that has tincture in it? Well, yes, I did. But it's diluted in water. In general, I prefer, whenever possible, not to put alcohol into a wound. There are some times when that is the right thing to do. But usually those alcohol swabs are actually for cleaning my tweezers, right, and cleaning my needle and stuff. A couple extra things you'll see here. I like to carry a lice comb, because if you're in an encampment, that is a thing that you might have to do. It's not super fun. Lots of extra safety pins, trauma shears, multiple Sharpies, a tick remover, because in this area that's a thing. We definitely have to pull ticks out of people. Ponytail holders. I like the tea tree oil toothpicks. They work great as a toothbrush in a pinch. And in a really tiny little container, you get a bajillion of them, so it's like a lot of stuff for a very small package. Plus, if you really had to, you could take one of those, put it into a water bottle of clean water, and now you have a wound wash, because it's going to have that tea tree infused in it that's going to get into the water. So again, we're always looking for a million ways that you can use every single thing in your kit, so that if you run out of something, you have a backup, all that kind of stuff. Neutral items. Although in that picture there were some tampons, it's actually better to carry pads. If you're in any kind of situation where somebody may not have access to a restroom, you don't necessarily want to have a tampon in for a cajillion billion hours. It's better to have a pad than a tampon, but it's better to have a tampon than nothing. So at any rate, menstrual items. A space blanket or a trash bag, they're not perfect, but they're pretty great, especially if it's kind of raining a little bit and you want to keep somebody dry. Again, hand warmers, my EMT knife. In this particular pack, I used the 2 front pockets for personal gear. That is gear that I will not share with other people, because the first rule of being a medic is do not become a victim, right? You got to take care of yourself. So for me, my personal gear includes some snacks, a bandana because I can save the world if I have a bandana, some hygiene items, maps of wherever it is that I am. I always carry maps, chapstick, my own herbs for myself, some cash, whatever extra clothing bits. That's generally like an extra pair of socks, because again, you can conquer the world if you have dry socks. But whatever you need to sustain yourself, make sure that you have that. If you're just packing a kit that's going to be able to take care of everybody else, but you're not taking care of yourself, that's not going to work. So make sure that you have a section in your kit that is assigned only for you, that is sectioned off so that it does not intermingle with the supplies that you have for other people, so that you don't accidentally give away your own sustainable support. Yes, people are asking about menstrual supplies for dealing with bleeding of wounds and stuff like that. Yes, absolutely. Those are fantastic. Okay, and I'll go quickly. There's a big list of herbs here. So you'll see the first pile, it's all the same, up to the chamomile and ghost pipe. All that stuff is the stuff that I had in my daily carry and in my tiny carry. So we're down here to wood betony. Wood betony, and by this I mean Stachys officinalis. On the west coast, the plant called wood betony is actually pedicularis. They're not related. Pedicularis is awesome, but in this case I mean Stachys officinalis. Excellent for concussion. Really fantastic for concussion. I don't have it on the list here, but also can be used for epilepsy or for other kinds of seizures if you need to. Let's see, GI upset, panic, especially panic with dissociative or dissociation going on. And again, you know, when we're thinking about first aid situations, we're always thinking about the blood and the guts and the whatever, but panic is a huge issue. And through each of these, you've seen that I pack certain things specifically to deal with panic. And if it is some sort of a traumatic event, like the bombing of the marathon here in Boston a couple years ago, this is definitely a time when people are leaving their bodies. And so, I mean, you know, sort of emotionally, figuratively leaving their bodies, that dissociation. And having wood betony around can really help somebody go from that shocked state of dissociation back to, okay, I'm not happy about what's going on, but I'm in my body and I can function. Lindsay has a wood betony question that I can't see.
Oh, I'll put that. I'll talk about that. Before you get to that, real quick, there was a couple other questions. On the Q&A, I realized I have to assign it to you. That's why you weren't seeing them. But just back quickly, the pads we're talking about, tampons, and yeah, those are always, you know, everybody talks about how great tampons would be for this or that. I mean, you know, think about the reality of it. Tampons are not made to stop bleeding, and so if you had to as an improvised, it's fine, but to carry that instead of going out and investing in something like a $6 or $7 Oleus bandage, right, which is awesome. It has 4 or 5 different things. It's a modular bandage. You can get all the compression. You can pack a wound. It's got sterile, not just clean like a tampon, but sterile gauze in there that you can pack into a wound. Plus it's got the pressure, plus it's got an occlusive dressing on there for a chest injury, all of those things. I mean, why not just have that in your pack, you know, rather than tampons? Not to, you know, if you don't have the pack and you've got tampons in your purse or whatever, that's fine, but it's, you know, just remember, tampons aren't made for that, so don't put them in as a substitution for something that's really made to stop bleeding very well. Okay. The other question really quickly about heavy bleeding, I just wanted to say something about that. I know people talk about cayenne, they talk about yarrow. Yeah, those are decent hemostatics. They do work, but again, this is not the best possible thing you can do for a bandage for a wound that's bleeding heavily is a pressure bandage, or if that doesn't work, a tourniquet. Right, and we can even take a tourniquet and we can convert it. If you come to the Wahoofer program where I'll teach you how to do that, or you can learn that from from advanced EMS stuff too. But in the wilderness, you have to be able to convert from a tourniquet back to a compression bandage. You might have to do that, but a compression bandage is your first stop, not throwing herbs into it. Now, there's herbs that are very useful for things like inflammation, for infection, and for proliferation and to tissue healing very well, but they're not your first stop for, especially not in a wilderness situation or where you're away from higher definitive care. They should not be your first stop to just stop bleeding. It shouldn't be your first thing you reach for.
Also, I'm not a huge fan of throwing powder into a wound because you're going to have to get that out again later. So, you hear all the time about, oh, cayenne powder, if you cut yourself in the kitchen, just throw it right on your hand, it'll stop the bleeding. Yeah, okay, it'll also hurt, and that's great. You put hair on your chest and everything. I don't know, I just, the simplest answer can be the best. And just pressure is really awesome. You don't have to wash pressure out again afterwards. Good. Okay, let's move on to ginger. Ginger tincture is phenomenally useful. Great for nausea. Great for GI upset. It's a lovely antispasmodic. Again, this is another thing you could rub it on topically as a liniment for somebody who has, pulled a thing or any kind of muscle pain. I just can't think of enough wonderful things about ginger. Ginger is also great for respiratory upset or respiratory infections, although I didn't have it in there. Good for coughing. And good in situations where a person is very cold, can help them to warm up. You'll want to have as warm a situation as you can give them, but before you give them the ginger, but that's really, really useful. Wild ginger is not the same plant. You need to use regular Zingiber tincture. Regular ginger. Okay, we have here some Coptis trifolia, that's the gold thread. Basically, this would be whatever your local berberine plant is. For me, that's gold thread because it's very abundant on our land. But that is going to be different for different people based on where you live and what's abundant in your area. But again, this we're going for the antiseptic, antimicrobial, berberine content. It's going to be great in small doses for problems in the mouth, like an abscess or any kind of cut or wound in the mouth. But this would be useful all the way up to things like dysentery, that had a microbial cause. Then I like bentonite clay. I don't carry activated charcoal. I think pretty much the reason I don't carry it is because my husband does. It's pretty fantastic, but I just don't have it in my kit. I do carry bentonite clay. I like it for mild food poisoning. I like it for insect stings. I like it for any kind of weepy skin condition. It can also be helpful for diarrhea. A lot of these things are things that you might also use activated charcoal for, but like I said, that's in my husband's pack, so I don't have it. Shea butter. I carry shea butter for situations like peeling skin or dry damaged skin, but also in this area, cold tolerance. If people are going to be out and exposed to cold, having skin that is not dry is more tolerant to cold than if a skin is very dry. This is also useful for any kind of exposure type stuff, like chilblains or any of that chapping that happens from long exposure to cold. Um, Shea butter is also very nice for if people have fungal or problems in the like athlete's foot or trench foot or whatever, and especially that part of athlete's foot where it gets very peely. This can be really soothing. And in this area, because it's really damp, often we do have problems with people who have athlete's foot or other kinds of their feet have been wet for a long time problems. So we do carry shea butter for that. It's just straight up shea butter. And then cayenne powder. Somebody had asked about cayenne powder versus cayenne tincture. I think either would be fine. And again, you know, if somebody's having a heart attack, please call 911. But after you have made the call, go ahead and give them cayenne powder. You can't hurt them with it, and you know, maybe it will help them between now and when the paramedics get there. We have a lot of we in the herbal community have a lot of direct experience with this. Chuck Garcia in California has done it multiple times. Once on a guy who was actually dead, and he watched him have a heart attack. He watched him fall to the ground and die. He was moving in that direction. He just didn't get there fast enough. Checked the pulse. There wasn't one. Gave him a mouthful of Tabasco sauce, and the guy sat up and punched him in the face. So please call 911. I am not saying that Tabasco sauce is a substitute for definitive higher care, especially in the case of a heart attack. However, again, if you're out there and you've got nothing else, do it. The reason that I really love cayenne, either powder or tincture, is I love it as a vital force stimulant. So this is often more about keeping us going than anything else. I like it better than I like caffeine because it doesn't have the jitters associated with it, but just a couple drops of cayenne tincture or a little bit of cayenne powder on the tongue, and let me tell you, you are awake and you're ready to go. So when that is an issue because you have to keep medicing or because you have to keep moving or because of whatever, that cayenne is there. Plus it's really warming, and that can also be great. It's always something that we're thinking about in this area. And then cinnamon powder also. Again, with wet foot problems, a clean pair of socks with a bunch of cinnamon powder in it is really, really helpful. But it's also great for GI upset, for cough. It's a wonderful antispasmodic. I like it as a powder because that way you can mix it with water or not mix it with water, and that way you can have the interaction that cinnamon has with water in whichever way you need it. Cinnamon will absorb water, so if you have diarrhea going on and you take some cinnamon powder in a capsule, that will be effective for the diarrhea depending on the cause of the diarrhea and how serious it is. Whereas if you are getting dehydrated, you can use cinnamon powder in water and then drink that, and it gets very mucilaginous. So that helps the water sort of stick around with you better. I'm noticing that it is 9:30. So I know that was a lot of information about a big list of plants all at once, and I see that you guys have some stuff going on here about the best lotions to use, so that's really awesome. Sam, what else? Is there anything else that you'd like to toss in there?
Let me just say really briefly that I think one piece, and I don't know if you mentioned this or not, Katja, I know you packed this way, but I just wanted to bring it out in case you didn't mention it, is that you want to think about in packing, you know, you want your kits to open up flat. You want to be able to hang them up or you want to be able to lay them out. So travel kits, I know Katja mentioned this already, talking about travel kits a little bit. Travel kits are great, and if you check out our Herbal Medics first aid kits that we sell, the trauma kit portion of it is what is it? Lewis and Clark travel kit, and it's awesome. And I've spent money, ridiculous amounts of money, checking out EMT and EMS type stuff. I mean, I was a paramedic at one time. I'm actually getting that licensure back. There's a program we do for Special Forces medics where you can get that real easily. So I mean, I used to be into EMS type gear and kits and everything, and some of that stuff is really expensive. And I tell you, these travel kits are better. They work better, and they're a heck of a lot cheaper. So one that I use, I kind of like, is not the Lewis and Clark one I like as well, but I actually like this one here as a travel kit where I just keep all my trauma stuff in the center, or all my first aid stuff in the center, and then I usually have most of my herbal stuff on the sides here, which I use Nalgene. I've been using Nalgene for years. I think I'm the first person that I know of, herbalist that I know of, who has been marketing at least, Nalgene bottles, and Katja mentioned Ed Smith has been testing them. I've had tinctures also sitting in Nalgene and glass from the same batch for years, 3 years and even longer, and I could not pass a taste test. Now that's a blindfold test to tell you that there's a difference. Now, granted, that may not be a microscopic and any spectrographic or whatever tests that maybe I'm thinking hopefully that Ed has done on those, but
Ed did have chemical assays done.
Did he? Okay, so yeah, so he can say definitively even, that this works and works well, and it's all BPA free now as well. And you look at alcohol. If you go to the store and buy alcohol, to the liquor store, how many of that alcohols are in plastic containers, right? Many of them are. So you know that that's also considered, for better or worse, the FDA considers it safe. That may or may not give you any kind of a good feeling on that. Anyway, on our Herbal Medics kits, we've always been using these and packing these. We've taken them to Nicaragua, we've taken them to Mexico, we've taken them to Belize, we've taken them to Costa Rica, all around the U.S. Everywhere I fly, everywhere I drive, I'm always using these as my first aid kits. Now at home and in our big clinic, of course we use glass, absolutely. But for travel and for first aid kits, this is it. So as you can see, it's quite a bunch of stuff you can get into something like this. And the last thing I wanted to kind of leave you with from me is just, make sure you subdivide your kits, especially for the things that aren't emergent, that you don't have to pull out in a hurry. And so this is an example, so just larger bandages, your gauzes, and then wet wipes and some dental floss, which is useful for many different things, as well as, of course, dental hygiene. And then just, some Band-Aids. So I pulled apart the Band-Aids, and what I have here is some different size Band-Aids, some moleskin, very important for blisters if you're on the road or in the woods. Working in blisters and foot care is absolutely essential. Some Steristrips, an 18 gauge needle, which I use a lot for pulling out abscesses and thorns and things like that, and then a magnifying glass. And I like to use a Fresnel lens, because the Fresnel lens you can get, you can start fires with it too. You can really get you can get a really good magnifying feature from that. So it's a little bit of a survival kit too. We always do and kind of mix survival with first aid, because where do the two really, where does one stop and the other start? If you have somebody who's hypothermic, or you have somebody who's in serious shock of any type of shock, one of the first things you need to be concerned with is keeping that person warm. Well, what if all you have is just a crappy little space blanket, and it's been raining for 3 weeks, and everything is soaking wet, and you're 6 hours from the trailhead, and it's starting, bad weather's moving in? Wouldn't starting a fire be kind of an essential first aid piece of skill for you to have in that situation? So that's, this is kind of where we're coming from with everything we do at the school and with Herbal Medics too. So I think that's all I really wanted to say, just to add those pieces in.
Great.
Let me type this in for you. Fresnel, there's a question here about, is Fresnel is spelled this way though. I like the Fresnel lens. So any other questions real quick? We've run over time here, I know, and hopefully it looks like we've kept most of our people, which is good. I hope you guys got something out of this. I didn't get a chance to get into herbs, but I don't really need to. I gave you this huge handout. On that handout, I list formulas, I list herbs, and again, I'm going to email out a chart, a mind mapping chart, very similar to the one I did for first aid. I'm going to mail that out when I finish it for herbs, which should be the next couple of days. I spend a lot of fun doing that, taking a lot of this information and organizing it into this visual graphic. So I've enjoyed doing it, so I want to go ahead and finish that, and then I'll send that out to you guys by email. Also, we'll send you out an email with an invite to the next webinar, free webinar we've got coming up, which is next week, which will be myself with Dr. Kyla Helm talking about integrative medicine. How do we, and we'll talk about some case studies and some specific cases that we've worked together as well, but also just, how would she approach something? How would I approach something? She's very much on the nutritional. She's a functional medicine doc, family practice, MD, originally in the Army and then out into the civilian world, and she's been practicing for, I think, close to 20 years. So we'll, how would she approach something? How would an herbalist approach something, and give people a really good idea to things to talk about or think about in terms of functional medicine. Lastly, I really want to thank Katja for being here and talking. It was really great, Katja, to have your input on all of this, and I hope you enjoyed it. And we'll be doing more of these for sure. I'm looking forward to doing more with Katja, especially as part of the chapter.
This has been a lot of fun. If you guys end up with questions later, please feel free to email us or to contact us, and I hope that we see you at a webinar soon.
All right. Well, good night, everybody, and we will talk to you soon. I'll have a recording out, and I'll send you guys a link to the recording as well for later. Thanks again, Katja, and good night, everyone.
Night.